What's going on? What's going on, everyone? Coach Derica here, coming before you with another live. I promise tonight, and I always say this, but I promise I'm going to make this short. I want to get straight to the point. I want to make sure that I am actually live, and it appears that I am. So hopefully you guys are having an awesome Tuesday. I know the day after the holiday is always the hardest to get back into the groove of things. We feel like our week is thrown off, everything's all discombobulated and whatnot, but hopefully you guys have transitioned out of the holiday back into the business mindset. Some of us never left the business mindset. But nonetheless, as you guys know, I am doing a 30-day series on different topics that have to do or are related to brokenness and coming out of brokenness. Thus far, I've covered things such as trauma, a body's response to trauma. I've talked about triggers and a couple other things. So if you have missed some of my lives that I've done 4 so far. This is the 5th one, if I'm correct. You definitely want to go back and watch those. There probably is some good information if you know anyone who has experienced any type of traumas. I definitely would recommend that you share these lives with them. There may be some information in here that can help them. So tonight, I'm not going to be before you long. I know I always say that, but I really, really cannot be before you long. I really want to talk very quickly. Awesome, Shell. Let me know how you like it. Um, so I want to talk quickly tonight about grief, the process of grief. It took me a long time to understand that when after you come out of something and after you deal with certain situations, that there is a process of grieving that has to take place. And I talked about this briefly before, but I want to talk about a little bit more in detail on today, if I can, because I think a lot of times people think when they go through certain situations that once they're done with the situation, once the situation is over, then they're good. There's really, okay, I hand it over to God and I'm good. But that works for some people. But for other people who have been through repeated situations or who have traumas that really truly affected and changed the course of their life, that may not be enough for them until they're able to get to a point where they can clear out some space so that they can receive the deliverance that they're needing. So I want to talk about the process of grief, okay? A lot of times when we think about grief, we think that grief only has to do okay, Antoinette. We think that grief only has to do with losing a loved one. And I'm here to tell you right now today that that is not necessarily the case. If you have had to deal with, losing a loved one, that is definitely a traumatic experience. That is something I wish on no one. Okay. But we do know that unfortunately, death is a part of life. So that's something that we do know. But as far as dealing with the traumas and things like that, you have to understand that the trauma lives in the mind, body, and the soul. Okay. Because we all have a soul. And I want to talk about the stages of grief. So we have denial. And let me make a disclaimer. Okay. I am speaking from a point of my experience, my research, the counseling that I had received, my understanding, my healing, my victories. Okay. So, no, I have not been to a school to get certified or anything like that. I'm giving you what I've been through, and that is what I am speaking on. That's the stage, that's the qualification I'm coming from, is from my experience and the things that I had to go through and be willing to go through in order to get to a different level, in order to break through some bondages and some strongholds that were on me very, very, very strongly. Okay. So there's a lot of people will say there's 7 phases, 5 phases, 12 phases, but I really want to focus on about 5 phases right now. Okay. The first phase I would like to talk about is denial or shock or belief. Okay. I've combined those into one: denial, shock, or belief. Because what happens is when you're dealing with the trauma or something that has really, really rocked your soul, your brain doesn't know where to put it. Your brain doesn't know how to process it. Your brain doesn't know how to deal with it. Okay. So therefore, there's going to be a level of shock or denial. Okay. It's easier for some people to act like it never happened. Okay. I've done that before. I don't know if you can relate to that, but it's easier for some people to act like nothing ever happened. All right. And to try to go on and act like it's still not happening. And then you have some people who are in shock. They're in complete total shock or disbelief. They cannot believe that this has happened to them or is happening to them or has happened to them. Okay. So those are the first levels. So, of course, we always talk about the first step to being able to get over anything is admitting that something is there. Admitting that something is there. I always like to say that the devil hates a true confession. He hates a true confession. Okay. And as Denicia always says, the truth don't need no help. So when you come clean and you start to take all that stuff that you've been trying to keep in the dark, keep in the closet, and you start to really be transparent about that stuff, you are opening up the doors for you to be able to receive the deliverance that you need to receive. So denial, shock, or disbelief, that is what I call the first stage of grief when dealing with the type of traumas that I'm accustomed to dealing with. Okay. Bargaining. I don't know if you've ever, you think about bargaining, you think about clearance shopping, discount shopping, things like that. But bargaining actually is you're bargaining with the trauma. You're bargaining with the feelings. You're bargaining with the emotions. You're trying to postpone it. You really don't want to have to deal with it. You don't want to have to feel it. You don't want to have to know what it's like to actually sit in it and admit the dirty, rotten, gutter truth that this really happened to you or is happening to you. Okay. So then you have the bargaining aspect. So you're really just trying to postpone it. You don't want to feel it. You don't want to deal with it. And in some ways you can kind of say it's the same as the denial, shock, or disbelief, but it's not always the case. Okay. So you have the bargaining effect. All right. Then you have the anger. Okay, now you're angry. You're actually ticked off. You are actually ticked off that this has happened. Like, you have the audacity to do me like this. You have the audacity to think that you could get away with this or whatever the situation may be. So now you're angry. Okay, you're angry. All right. The next phase I want to talk about is guilt. Okay. Because you can go from guilt to anger, from anger to guilt. Okay. I'm not giving it to you in a chronological order because I felt all these in different orders at one point in time. So guilt and shame. So guilt and shame is going to come from when you start to question yourself. Is there something that I did to deserve this? Is there something that I did to warrant this? Is there something that I said? Was there somewhere that I was that I shouldn't have been? What is it that maybe I have done that has caused this to happen to me? Okay. So you have the guilt and you have the anger. And in the midst of that, you have shame as well, too. Once you go through those phases, I like to say that depression sometimes can take over if you're not aware of what is happening to you. Depression. I went into a state of depression. I really did. I went into a state of depression. I really was separated and checked out for a while. I really didn't want to deal with life. Okay. So I was depressed. When I finally started moving through the different stages of grief, I kept getting stuck in phases because for me, the enemy tried to make me feel as if it was too much for me to bear. It was too much for me to deal with. It was too much for me to cope with. Okay. So when I got stuck in that phase of depression or anger or guilt or shame, it really actually caused more of a traumatic experience for me because now I'm in this place where I can't seem to get out of it. And so life is still happening. So now I have all these other things coming at me and I don't know how to process that either. So you have to be very, very careful when you're going through these phases to make sure that you don't get stuck. You got to really, really talk this thing out. Okay. And then the last stage is where I'm at for some of my traumas, not all of them, but for some of them, okay, is acceptance and hope. Okay, acceptance and hope, because there has to be a point in time where you turn it over to God and you say, you know what, I can't do this on my own. I don't want to do this on my own. This happened to me, but this is not who I am. Okay, this happened to me and there was nothing that I could have done to change the course of that. Okay. But I also know that you never put more on us than we can bear. And although this feels like it's too much for me to bear right now, God, I know that you got me. I know that I can get through this. I know that I'm strong enough to do this with you. So when I came to a point of acceptance and hope, I felt like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders. A weight was lifted off of my chest. I no longer felt like I was buried alive and I was suffocating because I was no longer trying to keep these secrets. I was no longer trying to do it on my own. I was no longer trying to act like it never happened. I was no longer stuck in a state or a place where I was depressed because I felt like I couldn't control the situation. Okay. I talked yesterday about different triggers, and one of those triggers is lack of control. Okay. When you feel like you don't have control, it can be a trigger for you. All right. And so, like I said, I'm not going to be before you all long. I just really, really wanted to talk about the stages of grief. You have to make sure that you are moving through it. And when it was brought to my attention at one point in time, I remember asking the lady, I was like, yeah, but this stuff, I mean, this isn't like a trauma that's dealing with, a loss of a loved one for this particular situation that we were discussing. And she was like, but it's a loss. Somebody took something from you. Somebody took something from you. And when you are separated or when you lose something or you have to give up something, it is a loss. It's something that you were accustomed to having and now you no longer have it. So that means you have to go through a process of grief. And when she broke it down to me and explained it to me, I was really mind blown because I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it that way. That makes so much sense. So when you have someone who maybe they were never in an abusive relationship before, and then they get in an abusive relationship at some point in time in their life, someone took something from you. They took your safety from you. They took your freedom from you. They took your protection from you. Okay. If you have someone who's verbally abusive, okay, they took your peace from you. They took your tranquility from you. They took your serenity from you. So I really had to begin to understand that all of these situations are attached to some form of a feeling of a loss. And so because it's attached to some sort of feeling of a loss or a detachment, then you are going to have to go through the process of grieving. And I did not understand that until it was broken down to me in a way that made a whole lot of sense to me. And so I wanted to share that information with you because it really was a pivotal point in my healing, in my journey, is to understand that I had to grieve what I went through. And when I gave that Derica, young Derica, when I gave her permission to actually feel the things that she had been trying to bury for so long, and bury and eat and drink and all those types of things. When I actually did that, I started to feel a whole lot of relief. Now, of course, when you're in the midst of it and when you're in the thick of it, it's hurting. It's hurt you. It does, and it did. And but I'm here to tell you that there is hope. I'm here to tell you that there is a better tomorrow. I am here to tell you that it does get greater later. It's not the end all be all. And as I said in the beginning of the series, I will never sit and tell you that it is easy. I'm not going to tell you that. But what I am going to tell you is that it's doable, that you definitely can do it. You may need to do it alone. I had to be in a state of isolation. It's something that I had to go through. I didn't necessarily have that one-on-one with someone every day to be able to talk me through it and break the steps down to me every day. Everything was just kind of thrown at me. This is what you got to do. You need to go through this stuff. You need to understand it. You need to study it. You need to research it. And I had to really, really surrender my process, my understanding, my perception, my beliefs. All of those things I had to surrender and really be willing to accept the things that God was showing me. And when he began to unbury suppressed traumas that I didn't even remember, okay, And that's the beauty about when you begin to write and journal, whether you write and publish a book or you're just journaling. When you begin to write, for me, I was typing. I had to condense what I had been writing for many years, and I had to condense it and start typing it. But it was so funny to me. Not funny. Nothing was funny about it, actually. It was bewildering to me how when I began to write, things started to resurface. And so there was times when I had to stop and I had to get away from the computer and I had to feel it, because the brain is a powerful, powerful organ, and it is capable of suppressing traumas when you already are dealing with something. When the brain feels like it's too much for you to deal with at that point in time, it will suppress it. It will suppress it. And when you start to feel that stuff and it starts to come to the surface again, and then everything starts to fill in, all the gaps start to fill in, the missing pieces to the puzzle, because I had fragments, I had the visuals, but that there's missing pieces to the puzzle. So when everything starts to get filled in throughout your entire life, it's like, oh my God. That is why I feel this way. That is why I respond this way. That is why I do this. That is why I think this. So I'm telling you, this for me at 44 now, I'm 44. Most of you guys know I just celebrated a birthday last month. So at 44, it took me all these many years to make the decision that it was time for me to heal. It took me all these many years for me to actually start seeking the knowledge and the expertise and really becoming studied up and knowledgeable on what really has to take place and what really the necessary steps to heal. It took me all these years to do that. And one thing I would tell you is that, yes, the things that people go through, some more than others, it sucks. It does. But what I would tell you is that do it quicker. Do it quicker. Do it with the urgency. Because there's something I didn't understand until now. My kids are basically grown. I have a 17-year-old. He'll be 18 in April. So my kids are basically grown. Don't wait like I did, okay, to try to figure out what the heck was wrong with you. Don't do that. I mean, if you're already in the same bracket I am, then what I would suggest that you do is, when you start to understand what's been going on with you for all these years, and when you start to understand your triggers and how you respond and how you process information, I want you to look at your children as well too and see if they've picked up some of those traits, because mine did. And so it required me to sit them down individually and have very transparent, apologetic conversations with them, not making excuses, okay, for my behavior. And I wasn't horrible, you know what I mean? But I should have been better, and I could have been better. Had I known better and chose to do something about it sooner, than I would have been. Okay. However, I'm very blessed because God's grace and mercy is sufficient. And He carried them when there were times when I couldn't carry myself. So sitting down and swallowing the pride and the ego, or whatever you want to call it, and admitting the areas that I fell short, and apologizing to them and allowing them a safe place to be able to speak to me about different situations so that I can clear that up and things like that. That was a necessary part for them as well too. So I would encourage you, if you are in a situation where your children are young, don't think that the things you go through don't affect them, because kids are like sponges. They absorb everything. They absorb everything. They may not know what they're absorbing, but they absorb everything. They know when there's tension in the room. They know when mom and dad or mom or whoever is angry or feeling some kind of way or sad. They know that. And because they are your children, you gave them life, you carried them in your womb, or whatever the case may be. They feel that. They're a part of you and they love you no matter what. So I would encourage you, if you know that you got some work to do the work, do it. Do it expeditiously. Don't wait. Don't wait. Do it expeditiously because, see, what happens is when you do it when your children are grown, when you do it when your children are grown, not only do you have to deal with your healing, but now you got to make sure they get theirs. Because now you're dealing with a grown up. You see what I'm saying? And you really can't make them do anything. You can encourage them to do things, but you want to be able to show them that it's possible, because when they become susceptible to their own traumas and their own responses to trauma, then it makes it difficult as an adult, as a parent, when you can't help them, when you don't know how to help them. Okay. My daughter went through a situation a couple of months ago now. It's been 2 months now. She went through a situation. She had some sort of manic attack. And, her boyfriend said that she was trying to hang herself and just all types of stuff. It was after an argument that they had had. Anyways, she ended up going to the hospital. And here in North Carolina, I don't know how it is anywhere else, but in North Carolina, if they even suspect that you tried to harm yourself, then they will commit you. And so my daughter got committed. She got committed. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow. And it also hurt me because I felt responsible. I felt directly responsible for how she is having a tough time expressing herself or understanding what it is that she's feeling. And I felt directly responsible. So when I say that those are things that I still am dealing with and still am getting through and still am allowing God to help me out with, I really mean that. I really mean that. So I say all that to say, if you know you got some work to do it. Do it. Do it while they're young, if you can. Do it while they're young. Break the generational curses now. You have the power to do it. Don't make them do it. You do it. You do it. Because what happens is you pass your junk on to them, and then they pass their junk on to their kids, and then their kids pass their junk on to their kids. But guess what? They're not just passing on their junk, they're passing on the previous owner's junk too. So you're getting generation after generation after generation junk, and then you go and have kids, and then you pass yours and the previous generations on to your kids, and on and on and on and on and on. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. And I'm telling you, there ain't nothing worse than seeing your kids go through something and you can't do nothing to help them. You can't do nothing to help them physically. You know what I mean? So if you got work to do, I say it again, if you got work to do it. Do it early. Do it early, because it's not a good feeling to feel like you are directly responsible for seeing your children go through situations, seeing your children be in situations that they shouldn't be in because they've seen you do it. Seeing your daughters in relationships with men that are no good for them and clearly no good for them, but they don't have the confidence they need. They don't have the validation that they need to be able to walk away because they feel like they can't be alone because their mama didn't do it. You see what I'm saying? So it's important to Show that to your daughters, show that to your sons. And I did the best that I knew to do, just like my parents did the best they knew to do. But it doesn't mean that it was what we always needed emotionally. And so, unfortunately, we do the best that we can do, or the best that we know to do, but it's not always enough. It's not always enough. So trust me when I tell you, don't wait. This isn't something that you want to wait. Unpack those suitcases, pull them out from out the closet, underneath the bed, out the drawers. Go ahead, open it up, get that stuff unpacked, because it's time. Their expiration, they have worn out their welcome. It's time for them to go. It's time for you to open up them doors. It's time for you to get out that oil and start praying them spirits about your life, about your home, and up off your babies. Trust me. Trust me. Well, anyways, you guys, that's all I got. I didn't want to be on here too long. Hopefully you guys have signed up for Denisia's training at 7 o'clock today. Not 7 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock her time. I think it is. So it's 8 o'clock if you're Eastern Standard Time. And I think it's 7 o'clock. Let me stop because I don't know for sure, but I think that's right. Somebody help me if you're watching. But anyways, it's $7. Cash App, Growers Tunisia, and 8 Eastern. Thank you, Shell. Shell got my back. So yeah, but that's all I got, you guys. I will talk to you tomorrow. I'm looking forward to I'm not sure if I'm going to do this. Kind of depends on what the Holy Spirit drops on my heart, but I'm looking forward to talking about soul ties. I'm really looking forward to talking about breaking soul ties. That's a powerful topic, and I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or another time, but I'm really looking forward to talking about that, because a lot of people don't know how powerful soul ties are until you know. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one. I'll see some of you guys on training.